Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 312 podcast. We are in the city of Gloversville today with the mayor of Gloversville because HRP has done quite a bit of work with the city when it comes to Brownfields. And Mayor Vince DeSantis is here to talk to us today about how the Brownfields effort in Gloversville has been progressing. Mr. Mayor, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and about the city.
Yeah, my name is Vince DeSantis. I'm the mayor of Gloversville now. I have a legal background. I was a practicing attorney for many years. I was the Gloversville city judge for over 20 years. Eventually got on the city council afterward, became the mayor. I've been mayor of Gloversville for about 4.5 years, and things are progressing very rapidly in that time, and a little bit before that with the redevelopment of the city. Gloversville is an old industrial city, and you can tell by its name that its product was leather gloves. Of course, leather tanning was one of the tributary industries to glove manufacturing. The fact that we have so many tanneries that are now no longer in operation, those sites are, left on their own. They're a real brick wall between Gloversville and its future. And so what we have to do is we have to get them ready for adaptive reuse to other purposes. And that's where our relationship with HRP has really borne fruit.
Absolutely. Yeah, for any of you who have seen some of the other content we've done, there is some great stuff out there that we've done with the city. There's a video on HRP's YouTube channel you can check out where we get some drone footage of some of the sites. We'll be looking to get an updated video out to you soon. And we're also going to be taking a little stroll down through downtown in Gloversville in the Play Hard section of this podcast. So make sure to stick around for that and head over to our YouTube channel to see what the downtown looks like. Now, Mr. Mayor, one thing I've always wondered about the history of Gloversville. I'm assuming it is not a coincidence that a city named Gloversville became the glove-making capital. What was the order of events in which glove manufacturing developed here, and then the city became Gloversville?
It's really an interesting story. Mm-hmm. This goes way back to the beginning of the 19th century, when Gloversville was being settled right at the end of the 1700s after the Revolution, and in the early decades of the 1800s. It was the village. There were three villages: the village of Kingsborough, McNabb Mills, and the settlement on the hill, what they called the settlement on the hill, and the center geographically between those three villages was where Gloversville developed. Mm-hmm. It sort of came together. Those three villages came together to the village of Gloversville, and it was in 1826 that the name Gloversville was put on this, and the reason for that was that the first settlers came here from New England, mm-hmm. and they realized that there was a lot of deer skins. There were a lot of and the Indians taught them how to tan the deer hides, and to make leather. So because of the abundance of clean water here, they had an overabundance of this tanned leather, and so they decided to start manufacturing in their homes as a cottage industry leather apparel. Mm-hmm. And so they sort of focused on mittens and gloves, and they sold them to neighboring communities. One day, a man by the name of Elijah Judson piled all of these gloves and mittens on a wagon and left for Boston. Mm-hmm. And several months later, he came back from Boston with $600 in cash.
Okay.
$600 at the time was about a year's wages. And he said to everyone, these people in Boston absolutely love our gloves. Mm-hmm. And so everyone in Gloversville realized at that time mm-hmm. that what they were doing in their barns and in their homes was creating a very valuable commodity. That's when everyone, really got into the idea that they could export these gloves to bigger cities.
Yeah.
And make money. But it was only after the Civil War, in the 1870s, that the people from New York City and that were involved in the garment industry discovered Gloversville, came up and started building factories here. So that's when glove making really began to flourish here.
Yeah.
And it went from a village of 1,300 people to a city of 13,000 people. That was the great growth. But the name Gloversville was when the first post office was established in 1826. In the 1920s, the population of Gloversville was about 25,000 people. And when I was growing up here, many years ago, glove manufacturing was going on all over the city. It was bustling. You couldn't walk down the street without hearing a sewing machine somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. And when about would you say that first started disappearing?
It started disappearing like right in the early 1960s was when the decline began. It was a gradual attrition, but over the course of 30, 40 years after that, glove making really declined dramatically in Gloversville.
Yeah, Gloversville, it seems like it really is the iconic epitome of, the upstate New York town that was so dramatically shaped by industry, then had to deal with the consequences of that industry leaving, and is now finding its, second wind, rebounding as this new type of community. And you're seeing a lot of that,
right,
with new people coming in, right?
Right, exactly. We have had an influx of people, professional people who can work from home from other places, even, out of state. And in quite a few, it's really in large numbers, actually.
Yeah.
It hasn't really crested yet, but we have had a variety of people, professional people moving into the city, into our neighborhoods from far away because of, really the location of Gloversville is so ideal.
Yeah.
We are right in the foothills of the Adirondacks. Within 15 minutes, you can be on the shores of a pristine lake. The forest to the north is tremendous. And then to the south, the Mohawk Valley, this very fertile valley. So the environment here, the weather here, the climate, and the way the community is situated as a small community that's very cohesive, that has a very walkable downtown, it's kind of ideal.
Yeah.
The thing that we've had to suffer from is that we're off the beaten path. We're 10 miles north of the thruway, but we're overcoming that because I think people are seeking some of that isolation a little bit today in the 21st century.
So that history has really been the reason why that industrial past is where all of these brownfield sites come from, these former tanneries. And now a brownfield site is one of these large or abandoned or potentially dangerous structures where there is some risk or potential risk to the health or safety of the residents nearby. And so the EPA has this program that allows funding to be dispersed to different communities or different applicants for it. This is all had for us, but just want to remind any listeners out there about what's going on with Brownfields. HRP Associates, we get contracted to do work, whether it be environmental assessments or potential remediation or cleanup along the way. Now, if you've seen some of the other content that HRP has put out with Gloversville, you'll know that we've been through the initial phases of the Brownfields program here. And what we want to talk about today is the current status and get some perspective from yourself as a municipal leader about how the Brownfields program is once you've started in a few years and you've made it to this phase. So what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, it all started in 2019. We got a citywide assessment grant, $300,000 grant from EPA. HRP, right from the beginning, was our consultants. And so we went through that $300,000 by doing assessments, phase 1 assessments, phase 2 assessments on our targeted brownfields, the former tanneries in our city. At the same time, we were establishing a BOA, which is a brownfield opportunity area with the state.
Yeah.
And that BOA has been submitted to the state for approval. All of these brownfields are within that zone, that brownfield opportunity area, which opens up opportunities for funding for redevelopment of those areas for future use. And just as we were completing that first $300,000, we applied for an additional grant for citywide assessment, and we received that grant of $500,000 for additional assessments, because assessments are, kind of expensive, and sometimes you can't fully assess or do a complete phase 2 without doing demolition work. So we've been able to actually do some demolition work, taking down some of the old buildings in the tanneries on certain of these sites, to enable us to really get into the ground and make sure that we have full data on exactly what environmental remediation is required. And so and we're in the midst of administering that second grant.
Yep.
Now, what that does is it tees us up for applications to EPA for remediation money, to be able to remediate some of these sites and clean them up, actually clean them up. This is something that has been, and I've said this before, a brick wall between Gloversville and creating Gloversville as a 21st century community. And this is the first time that our city has been in a position to be able to actually attack and clean up these sites and reuse them for 21st century uses. New housing, recreational facilities, clean industry, the things that make a community successful in the new world, in the new century. And so we're really excited, because now the doors are open for us to actually reinvent the city of Gloversville as a flourishing, thriving community in the future. And because of our location that I mentioned before, I think that future is very, very bright if we can, get through these hurdles of reusing our sites. And now there are many developers that are really looking for these sites, because it's not only the opportunity for the city to clean up sites, but a developer can key into very lucrative tax credits connected with environmental remediation for their project. So these former tanneries that nobody wanted to touch, nobody wanted to even touch it with a 10-foot pole in the past, now could be places that are very attractive to new development, attractive to major investment from developers.
Driving up here from Connecticut, I am always struck by just how gorgeous the Mohawk Valley is. And I have a friend who lives in Boston who came out here for some caving activities up here in the Mohawk Valley, and was so struck by how beautiful it is, just decided that this is kind of where she wants to end up. So it really does draw in people from all over the place.
Yeah, it's true. The natural beauty of the area is really, really kind of unique in the country and even in the world. I've done a lot of traveling in my life. I was in the Army overseas, and I did extensive traveling in Europe. And you come home and you think, there's really nothing like this. How green it is, how lush the forest is, how fertile the land is.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Governor Hochul was here to announce our award of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And in her speech here in Gloversville, she talked about the new chip fab that is being relocated to Onondaga County in the Syracuse area. It's a $100 billion investment in a new chip fabrication facility to the west of here in Onondaga County.
Yeah.
And she talked about her conversations with the people there, they were all set to build that chip fab in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to her, and she said, I think they were just coming to me just to be polite,
Yeah.
she said. And she said to them, so have you seen the Finger Lakes? Have you actually seen the Adirondacks?
Mm-hmm.
She said, your people, you're talking about 30,000 people that are going to be employed here in your company. She said, they're going to live in a place that is one of the most beautiful places in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a second look, and they chose New York.
That's great. That's fantastic.
I mean, she just the natural beauty here is really spectacular. It's breathtaking.
Absolutely. And Gloversville is such a great example of historic architecture that's been preserved too. I mean, you see so many of these wonderful structures that are still here in a beautiful downtown as well.
Yeah, there was an era in the 1960s and 70s that most cities, small and mid-sized cities, went through that urban renewal time when all of the old Victorian stuff was demolished, and they wanted to make everything look suburban. So they demolished all these things. And in Gloversville, there was some of that. There was an urban renewal agency, but it was a very small project. And I think at the time, the administration in Gloversville was kind of behind the curve, and they just said, okay, we'll do this, but we'll do it on a very small scale. And so there's a small area to the west of Main Street that was sort of devastated by urban renewal.
Yeah.
And now we're in the process of filling that in with new construction. And I always said, it's a good thing that they really didn't get into urban renewal with both feet back in the 60s, because they would have devastated all of the historic buildings on Main Street. All of those buildings were built in the 1870s, 1880s, and some of them right around the turn of the 20th century. And they're all still there. And the original Victorian streetscape, the configuration of streets has not been obliterated. It's still there. And so now we have that beautiful history, that beautiful heritage to build on, to create a new city in the context of these historic structures.
Fantastic. So let's talk now a little bit about some of the specific sites in Gloversville and their status.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple of them that I'd like to mention. One of them is Tradition Leather. We call it the Tradition Leather site. It was JBF Industries, Tradition Leather, but it's up on the north end of the city. It's on West 11th Avenue. And it was the site of a tannery. And it is along the waterfront. The Cadetta Creek runs right through the center of this property, and the property is about a half a block of land. It's quite extensive. I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a fire in the old tannery, in the wood frame structure on the tannery, and just recently we've cleaned up all of the debris from that tannery. We've taken title to the property, and we're now right in the process of doing the phase 2 environmental assessment on that site. So we've got the waterfront, the creek, and we've got this large flat area, and directly across the street to the north is Kingsborough Elementary School.
Yes.
And so this in every direction from this sort of devastated former tannery are stable residential neighborhoods, 1 and 2 family houses, owner occupied mostly, in just about every direction from there. So now we've envisioned the idea of establishing this as a residential area. So once it's cleaned up to the highest standards, once phase 2 is done, we're going to be either cleaning this up or we're going to be handing it off to a developer who will take advantage of the environmental remediation tax credits, and develop this into housing. And we're talking about a variety of housing types. One of the things that my feeling is that these should be extremely energy efficient, low carbon footprint homes that can be marketed to young families. Because of the elementary school right there, it would be perfect for that. So starter homes for young families. It could also be, there's a one building on the site that was very solid that we didn't demolish because it was available for adaptive reuse. That's a solid building that could be developed into apartments for, young couples or for seniors. The area is big enough that, you could have a variety of different types of housing, row housing, attached housing, or even apartments. Our idea is a neighborhood that increases the population of the city dramatically. An opportunity for young families to get their foot in the door with home ownership, and increases the value of every residential neighborhood around it. Because the existence of the old tannery here has been a drag on that value for years and years. So it's a real transformation for that whole North End neighborhood of the city.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that we're hoping with our continued relationship with EPA and with the help of HRP, we'll be able to get. We actually have had several capable, experienced developers that have expressed an interest, and we've given them a tour, and this is always on the tour. So, and the other property that I want to talk about is this is really interesting property because it's kind of, it extends from almost very close to the center of downtown off to the west. And it's kind of a finger of land that goes off to the west. And we call it the crescent because the whole property is kind of in the shape of a crescent. And it's an industrial crescent that was the rail yard for the railroad is part of it. And that's city owned. That runs north and south. And then what runs to the west is a tributary to the Cayadetta Creek, the West Mill Creek that comes in from the west. And along that creek were several tanneries, Colonial Tanning and Lavor's Tanning to the west of that. The thing about that is it's always been a very an old industrial area, tanneries. But that finger of land is only about a block and a half wide, and both to the north and to the south of that is residential, 1 and 2 family houses, mostly owner occupied. The closer the housing gets to the industrial area, the less value it has. Right. So what we are hoping to do is establish a corridor there that it will be mixed use. And when I say mixed use, I'm talking about a little higher density new residential, so that you have a variety of different types of apartments, higher density residential, interspersed with recreational. So the bike path that runs north and south in Gloversville, we have a what we call a linear park, the FJ&G Rail Trail. And it's a bike path that goes all the way through the city from north to south. Now what we want to do is extend to the west, an extension of that bike path that goes out to the west and off, into the countryside to the west of the city, where we have a lot of recreational opportunities out there. There's bike trails at the Peck Hill Forest and up in Caroga Lake, a lot of biking up there as well. So the corridor becomes not only recreational and residential at the same time, but also we can allow commercial and light industrial in the area. so that you have those clean cottage industries that the 21st century is very famous for.
Yeah.
What they call the creative class,
Mm-hmm.
where people are creating, unique commodities in their own spaces. So you have live-work spaces and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So you have that 21st century creative economy, a lot of recreational, and also the residential, the variety of residential that people are very attracted to these days.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one area that I think I'm most interested in, because the result is so imaginative and so now, so 21st century.
Mm-hmm. And, so what other sites do we have?
Well, there's a real interesting site just to the south of the Tradition Leather site is an area that used to be Reisdorf Tannery, and it has 2 ponds on it, and it has one building on it that's okay for adaptive reuse. And then to the north of that is kind of a fairly steep slope of wooded land. And it's the land that has never been developed. And it goes up to the top of a hill where there's an overlook where you can see the entire city.
Yeah.
And that was the spot where the old reservoir was that was built in 1924. It was and that reservoir is empty now, and it looks like a stadium. It looks like like when you look down into it, it looks like you're looking into one of these old ancient Greek or Roman theaters.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility of creating a scenic overlook up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is the vision for that. We got a technical assistance grant from EPA, which we did, and the highest and best use of that entire area would be recreational, multi-use recreational facility. And so we're looking at restoring the ponds, being able to make those available for fishing, and doing interpretive trails through the wetlands near at the bottom of the hill, readapting the one open building to indoor recreation so that you could have rock climbing wall and some other indoor facilities, pickleball and tennis and paddleball, those types of things. There would be cross-country ski trails all the way up the hill through the forest, bike paths, so that in the summer it can be used for cycling and hiking. In the winter it could be used for cross-country skiing. There's a place that you could have a zip line from the top all the way down. There's a place where you could have a snowboarding area, and up at the top you could redevelop that old reservoir into skateboard park, theater for concerts, that type of thing, and actually have a scenic overlook up there. So it sounds like it could be a real center for recreational activities regionally.
Yeah.
If it was done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course in all the areas around it, the streets that are around there, and the houses and all of that, you could have Airbnbs, you could have areas where you could have a couple of restaurants in that area. Mm-hmm. It really could redevelop that area from what used to be a tannery and the houses and the people who worked in the tannery to something really, really attractive.
Yeah. Well, great. It's great to hear that we're making, progress on these sites here. So I guess to close this out in this segment, what advice would you give to your fellow mayors, to other community leaders, to people who are looking after or administering these grants, who are about to enter into the phase at which Gloversville finds itself now? My words are nothing but encouragement. Mm-hmm. We have been so lucky to have been awarded these grants. We're extremely lucky with our association with HRP,
They've been wonderful all along the way, and they've opened doors for us that have really never been open for Gloversville before. In any community, small cities especially, the process of applying for major grants from a large organization like EPA or from state agencies can be very daunting because they're competitive grants. But once you are successful at these grants, and once you get through the administration of a grant successfully, it becomes a lot less mysterious.
Yeah.
And the doors that it opens up for future development are enormous, and numerous, and well worth it.
Yeah.
Because there are so many incentives now, tax incentives, monetary incentives from both state and federal government today for redevelopment of small cities that have never been there before.
Yeah.
Really, the idea of economic development from the state and federal level have always been, toward large industry, and really, developing, large organizations, and now they're realizing the value of the livable community. The value of a community to be walkable with a high quality of life that's a beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
And so all of our old industrial cities should now be taking advantage of the opportunity to reinvent themselves, to look at their community with new eyes, and to see that the potential for just a new type of development in the 21st century.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us today on this Work Hard section. For those of you out there, remember to join us for the Play Hard section. We're going to take a little stroll through downtown Gloversville and give you a look at this historic and wonderful little city. Everybody, welcome to the Play Hard section. As promised, we are here with Mayor Vince DeSantis in Gloversville, getting the tour of downtown and showing you some of the great architecture, the beautiful scenery, and the scenic beauty of small town, small city in upstate New York.
So I just want to highlight a couple of things at this corner.
Yeah.
Right here is the Eccentric Club. It's kind of an exclusive social club. It's been in existence for a very long time, well over a century. And they actually did some historic restoration on the exterior, and the interior. It's a really great asset to the downtown.
Yeah.
They have events here every week, and it's a real asset to the city. And on this corner, we're sort of at the north end of the central part of the commercial area.
Yeah.
The Main Street goes all the way up. Price Chopper is up that way, about maybe less than a mile. And quite a bit of commercial development on that side, but the main commercial development is this way. And so you see that there are multi-unit apartment complexes here, and across the street is what used to be the Gloversville High School. Back in the day, it was structurally unsound. It had to be taken down. So the new building is an apartment complex. It has 37 one-bedroom apartments for seniors. And it was actually built to mock the style of the old high school.
Yeah.
As it was built in 2001. And off to the right was the junior high school.
Yeah.
And it extends that way. That is market rate housing. And it's been absolutely full. The demand for market rate housing close to downtown has been increasing dramatically over the last several years. And so here you have really affordable housing for seniors next to market rate housing, which are both very, very successful.
Yeah.
They actually have waiting lists for apartments. Wow. So, people are looking for places that are very walkable, that are within downtown, yet are upscale enough to, have that old look to them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So as we go down, we're going to come across a couple of developments. I want to highlight the next building down is this used to be the Montgomery Ward's store.
Okay.
And you can see that there's a metal front on it.
Yes.
This has just recently been purchased by a local person who is actually going to be manufacturing high-end kitchen cabinets in this building.
Wow.
And he wanted the building to be on Main Street because he wanted a showroom and offices and a place for people to come in and shop.
Yes. Yeah.
Right off the sidewalk. And in the same facility in the back will be, the people can actually see the cabinets being manufactured. So he's really at the point of delivering all the machinery that's required. So here we're talking about that 21st century manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Very clean manufacturing connected with commercial.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the new mode. Back in the 70s, they were talking about, oh yeah, we have to do all the manufacturing way over here.
Yes.
We have to do all the shopping way over here, and you have to live way over there.
Yeah.
So everybody was in their cars all the time.
Yeah.
Now people don't want to be in their cars. They want to be walking around. They want to see all this interesting stuff.
Exactly. Bringing it back into the downtown makes you're bringing back the community that was built around it.
Right, exactly. There's a loading dock in the back, so it's a perfect building for that. And when it was owned Montgomery Ward's, there's a mezzanine, and then there's a third floor, a complete third floor to it, which is going to be converted to other uses. So you can see that there are apartments, there are places in the back of this historic building here is a large apartment building that is occupied also. And this is Argesinger's. The Argesinger's building used to be a department store. 3 floors, department store, elevator inside.
Yeah.
It's now offices all the way up, and there's a plan of putting part of it into apartments because, again, the demand for living downtown is much greater than it was in the past.
Morning.
Hi, Jen. And across the street is the Burton Block. This is an interesting building. I was recently in the building and took a tour inside the building. The owner is looking for the opportunity to redevelop this as a combination of housing and recreational upstairs, because there used to be a gym up on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor is divided into 2 sides. One is a performance area and the other is a gym on the other side. But all around the outside of the building, there's the opportunity to establish housing.
Yeah.
And then redeveloping the 1st floor, bringing it back to the historic front that existed originally. So that's a project that there's been recently some interest in doing. We have downtown a historic district.
Oh, for sure.
And what that is, everything is within that district has to be reviewed by the Historic District Review Board. In other words, the colors that you have to, or the signage and all of that has to comport with that 19th century look. This is called Castelline Park. Dunday's Clothing. This is a men's clothing store that has been in existence for a long time. My mom bought our school clothes here when I was a kid. So you could tell that it's quite a long time. And so it still operates as a clothing store. It's very successful. Joe Gillis, the owner, does a lot of business online. So, I mean, that's opened up a tremendous opportunity for retail to have an online presence. I think he said about 50% of his sales are done online. This was originally City Hall, so we still call it Old City Hall.
Yeah.
Now it's in mixed use, so that there are developed apartments on the upper floors. The 3rd floor, the 2nd floor fully occupied by tenants.
Yeah.
The 1st floor is one of our DRI projects to be redeveloped into a bakery and restaurant. So it would be a family restaurant on the 1st floor. This building next to us here on the right is one of my favorite buildings. It's called the Getman Block. It used to be Martin & Naylor, which was a department store. and now it's being used for retail. The upper stores are vacant right now, but they have a lot of potential. It's those upper floors that second floor is completely open with wood floors, and the third floor is, I think it's still cut up into rooms, but the potential of having residential upstairs is really enormous. One of our main goals is to have all of these upper floors occupied as residential. Right now we're directly across the street from the Globe Theater. The Globe Theater was built in 1914. It was a vaudeville destination, and so it's pretty historic. It was a movie house, our movie theater, right up until 1974 when it closed. And then in 1995, a group of citizens got together, formed a nonprofit, and reopened the theater. They went in there with volunteer labor and they cleaned it all out. It was in terrible shape. Ever since that, ever since 1996, 97, it has continuously been opened. And just recently, it obtained a $2 million grant from the DRI, and then another $2 million Restore New York grant on top of that. So now the Globe Theater is in the throes of planning a $4 million restoration of the interior. So even though it's been open for public performances for the last, 25 years, it now is actually has the wherewithal to be able to really up the game to a truly multi-use performance facility.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's we've had movies there, and it's got a great group of volunteers and board members that really put in a lot of effort. So it's a center of a lot of enthusiasm in our downtown.
Yeah.
And it could be a real anchor. And then directly across the street from that is the Carriage House. This is a DRI project. It has funding from the DRI of $2 million, plus a Restore New York grant of $1.5 million, so that it becomes a brew pub on the first floor. And then there'll be on the second floor, there's going to be a banquet hall in part of the second floor, and then apartments in the back, and then the whole third floor will be apartments. So that the total will be 7 apartments in the building upstairs, and of course a major, quite a large restaurant on the first floor.
For mid-morning Wednesday, it's quite a busy, lively downtown, For those of you out there still listening, make sure to get over to the YouTube channel and take a look at the town here. Some really beautiful structures here. Love the look
right
of this
across
right
the
here.
street. Now, this is probably one of the most historic buildings in the city, if not the most historic. It's called Memorial Hall. It was originally the Casson Opera House. The entire second floor and third floor was a huge auditorium and opera house. So right now, there's an interesting story to this building. What happened was this building was in foreclosure. There was a lot of damage, water damage on the inside. And so the co-op, the food co-op, established itself in 2009. And it was in a small space up the street. And it talked the foreclosing agency into allowing us to go in there and redevelop this one space. And so the whole co-op moved into this whole space. They gave us a very, very low rent of about $400 a month for the space, and we expanded the space dramatically. And it was beautiful. We did all the floors over again, and we put it together. Then I can remember being in there myself, because I was part of the co-op's initial membership. And one of my friends who's a realtor came in and said, "You have to buy this building." What we did was we formed an LLC, and we appealed to the community to buy shares in the LLC and become partners. 100 shares, $5,000 a share. So that's we ended up raising $500,000, and took title to the property for about $70,000 and started the restoration. And that same LLC with the same 50 or so owners still owns this building today. The entire first floor is completely rented. The entire second floor is completely rented. And the third floor is a DRI project for artist co-working space. So it's a real success story. During that whole time from 2011 to now, it has not borrowed one dime in money.
Yeah.
It's only used the investments and the wherewithal of, the expertise of the people in it. So these 4 buildings in a row are all owned by one entity.
Yeah.
And it used to be the City National Bank, which was a local bank. And when they went out, NBT Bank took over, and then they sold the property. So this is the subject of a $750,000 Restore New York grant to redevelop. As you can see, the owner did some work to stabilize the structures, but we're hoping for a major change here. I can't speak to that right now because it's still in the throes of but we're hoping for a major transformation here and enlivening this whole space. Right now it's empty, but as you can see, being maintained. This is a barbershop. It's owned by Mike Medina, and it's been really, really successful. Mike's barbershop he does wonderful things for the community. He gives kids haircuts at school time, schools. You get free haircuts. If you come in and read a book, you get a free haircut. those kinds of things. Yeah. So, it's been a super success story for him, and for us. We just love it.
This is the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, the Chamber. It's the home for the Chamber of Commerce for 2 counties, both Fulton County and Montgomery County together. We're really happy to have them right here in downtown Gloversville.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they're happy to have a beautiful spot like that.
Yeah, quite the structure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was originally the Fulton County National Bank. Okay, so we've arrived at the 4 corners. This is actually the epicenter of the community of the city of Gloversville. As you can see, this is Fulton Street, and it's New York Route 29A. It goes from east to west. Yeah. And it's a very traveled lane because people coming into the area, they go up to the lakes to the west there. Route 10 and Route 29A goes right up to Caroga Lake, Canada Lake, Pex Lake, and all the way up to Pasico Lake. So it's in a very short time. And in addition to the Chamber of Commerce right at the corner, you'll see a building right over here. This used to be the Leader Herald. This was our local newspaper. Yeah. Now the Leader Herald went out of business just a few years ago. And that building is being purchased by Samco Inc., a glove manufacturer. Oh. And it gets lots of orders for government orders for gloves, and they are upgrading all of their machinery. The city just applied for a grant for them to buy state-of-the-art machinery, sewing machines and all of that. They have about 30 people that work there. They will be moving in like real soon. I think the closing is August 31st, so it's less than 2 weeks from now. And they'll be occupying the first, second, and even third floor, I think, with their operations and actually manufacturing gloves. Again, That's awesome. Right in the middle of Gloversville,
How
which
great
is
is
really,
that?
It's just a wonderful adaptive reuse. And I can remember, saying to Ron Peters, I look forward to being able to hear the sound of sewing machines from the sidewalk, because it'll bring me back to my childhood.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So it's a real story. This is one of my favorite projects in the entire DRI.
Yeah.
And maybe one of my favorite projects in the entire city. This is it's a plaza. It used to be the Latour building here.
Yeah.
And it broke our hearts because it was a historic building, but it was so structurally unsound that we had to demolish it.
Yeah.
But once it was down, and once I saw the size of this space, I fell in love with it. This is the perfect urban square, urban plaza. And so we're developing this into what we now call it Latour Plaza, but we'll probably, pick a different name for it. But this will be a plaza. It'll be probably one step up from the sidewalk. As you can see, the floor levels. We're going to try to meet the floor levels. It's going to have trees and a plaza with movable seating and everything. And toward the back, there will be a lawn and a stage, so that we'll be able to show movies. We'll be able to have plays. We'll be able to do music.
Yeah.
And so it'll be a lively space for public events. And then it increases the value of both sides of all the property on either side. We've just recently reached out because we're in the planning stages of planning the details of the new plaza.
Yeah.
So we've reached out to these owners on the side, and they're so enthusiastic about it. As you can see, the new owner of the building on West Fulton Street there that backs onto this used to be a bank. You could see by the vault back there.
Yeah.
You can see that he's up there on the second floor with an umbrella table. He's done, the carbon, or the copper flashing. You can see the roof is all redone over on this side. I think it'll be one of the most used public areas, and it will enliven this whole area commercially.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the south end. New owners of other buildings on both sides of the street on South Main Street. So really, we expect this to be a destination. Once we're finished, and I'm thinking by the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025, a lot of these projects will be completed and will be active, and it will increase the value of everything down here. So this is the entrance part of our historic library.
Yes.
And it's a Carnegie library. It was built in 1904. It's unique because it's in a Beaux-Arts style. So it was completely restored just a few years ago, and it's now a state-of-the-art library. It's the pride and joy of the community, really. A lot of people come that I've talked to are here as visitors and say, I want to see the library. I heard all about your fantastic library. Gorgeous. But there's a glass domed atrium on the inside. Beautiful, just a beautiful historic building, both inside and out.
Fantastic. Well, folks, if you are able to make your way up to Gloversville, make sure to check it out. That's going to wrap it for us today. So glad you could join us. Mr. Mayor, so glad you could be with us today.
Thank you. It's my privilege to do this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, make sure you are subscribed, like the video, rated 5 stars if you are still listening out there. Thanks so much for being with us, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.